of the phrase "a generation built for a different world." I think that's something you may want to familiarize yourself with because it's becoming a more prevalent saying in society. You know, it's like, well, what are they talking about? Generation built for a different world. You know, it's harder for older Americans like myself to advise younger generations because the world is different than when we grew up. When we were their age, you know, things were different. It's amazing how technology has advanced. Now, the human condition hasn't really changed, but the technology has advanced. You know, a 22-year-old, you know, from my generation probably had similar issues as someone who's 22 years old today. But the difference is the technology, the advancements that you know how the world operates, how economies operate, how people look at work. You know, we talked about the gig economy and gig workers. You know, a a generation built for a different world. You know, I think is getting to the idea that AI is going to play a larger and larger role. And you know, we think about self-driving trucks, but you know, I think that could happen, but maybe not for a while. Um, you know, obviously there are some prototypes out there on the road currently, and maybe self-driving trucks aren't that far away. But AI has the potential to disrupt a lot of workers that are truck drivers. You know, most likely the white collar entry level jobs uh, is most likely going to be affected by AI. AI is going to disrupt those opportunities. And who takes those entry level white collar jobs? Are college graduates. You know, so here they have a 4-year degree, and it's already competitive, and here comes AI, and it just wipes out all those jobs that they're competing for. You know, so um, you know, AI can disrupt a lot of things, and you know how work is being performed, and who's doing the work. You know, and are you using AI in your work? Uh, More and more as I do Google searches on things that interest me, there's an AI assistant there to, you know, give me a summary of all the information on the internet instantly. You know, it's amazing. And, you know, obviously it can be used for good and things like that, but it can also be used for bad. You know, when you think about eliminating, you know, millions and millions of jobs. You know, so in an AI future, in generations to come, you know, I think the blue collar worker is going to come out ahead of the white collar worker because it's much more difficult to replace a mechanic with a robot than it is to replace an office worker. You know, the office worker could easily be replaced by AI. You know, a skilled trade is not easily replaced by AI. You know, it may be something where the best paying jobs are going to be blue collar jobs, including trucking. You know, and I think you'll see the type of workers coming into trucking in the decades to come may be highly educated, maybe college educated. You know, they may be people with 4-year degrees or even higher. And, you know, they will bring, you know, these skills that they have, whether it's people skills or management skills or business skills, communication skills or legal skills, whatever it is, accounting skills, they'll bring that to the trucking industry. Now that may be an improvement. You know, maybe that'll make the industry better. A higher educated workforce always seems to be better, you know, for the industry versus, you know, low skilled, low educated workforce, although hardworking. You know, so there you may see, you know, more college educated people driving trucks come small business owners, become owner operators. I think it's inevitable that someone with, any business courses, whether it's 2 year or 4 year college degree in business, if they were to get into trucking, they would automatically go right towards the owner operator business model, without a doubt. And that they're going to be very comfortable with that. Um, I think there could be more competition within driving. If white collar jobs are going away, you know, these workers gotta go somewhere. They're gonna go look at the skilled trades. There's already a big movement for skilled trades. Being better jobs, more reliable, better pay, more rewarding. Um, I would expect that would be true for trucking as much as it is for any other skilled trade. So when you hear the phrase a generation built for a different world, um, it's about how the nature of work is changing, and how AI and technology is disrupting the workplace. Um, I think it's very difficult for someone who's 20 years older than a younger person to tell them this is the type of career you should be focused on. How can you do that in an AI driven world? You don't know. you know Nobody knows. It's like, do you know that's going to be a good job? You think it might be, but why not? Because AI could just take it over. So it's one of these things where you just gotta let the younger generation figure it out. It's almost better for them, to having come up with, come of age during this time of technological advancement. They will know. They'll have a good idea where the job opportunities are, where they're not. Um, an older worker, might say, well, you should go to college, get a 4 year degree. That's your pathway to success. That's been proven to be false. That's not true. That's not true at all. A high school graduate who goes to a trade school for 2 years, and gets to an apprenticeship program, becomes a journeyman with a union skilled trade job, is going to make $100,000 a year. And have great job security. Whereas a 4 year college graduate probably can't find a job. And when AI comes into the workplace, they're not going to have a job. Even if they were lucky to get a job, the AI take it away from them. So I think there's going to be this movement towards blue collar skilled trades. And I think you're going to see all kinds of people enter trucking. Trucking invites people from all walks of life. It doesn't matter what you did, your first 20 years of work. Now you're in trucking. I think it's really a great opportunity for everybody to get your CDL and be part of the blue collar workforce. I think you're going to have more job security being a blue collar worker than you are going to be a white collar worker. The companies are already asking their employees why their job even exists. Why should I hire you instead of using AI? If you can't answer that question during an interview, you're not going to get hired. So that's tremendous pressure on those candidates. It's like, you used to have to compete with other college graduates. Now you got to compete with the computer. So I've been looking at some of these Teamsters contracts, union contracts, and the Teamsters are negotiating their contracts with these trucking companies that says that there will be no self-driving trucks. So it could be a completely different workforce, 10 years, 20 years, who knows? That could come very quickly. You may not even have 10 years before the nature of work is completely changed by AI. A lot of non-union drivers poo-poo the idea of the Teamsters. Um, but I tell you, if you think AI is going to take over, if you think AI is going to be, in your company, you know, and your company is going to start using self-driving trucks, Teamsters might be the only thing that'll help you keep your job. So you can never really say, a wise person would not eliminate their options. And you could never truly say you would never join a union. There may be circumstances out there that have yet to make themselves known to you. And it's like, well, I never thought I'd say this, but now I want to be part of a union. you know, because the nature of work and the way the world is changing, you may want those union protections from AI self-driving trucks, or how about the AI inward-facing cameras, or AI assistance while you're driving. You think ELDs are bad, wait until the ELDs incorporate AI. You know, don't you think that would happen? I almost guarantee you it's going to happen. The AI is going to watch you like a hawk. And, if you don't want to have that kind of future, you may want to reconsider your value system, your belief system towards the Teamsters. Teamsters might be the only thing that saves you. So even as an independent contractor, as owner operator, we often have opposing roles to play in the trucking industry. But there are some things that all truck drivers have in common. We all want our jobs. We want to keep driving trucks, union or not. Non-union, union, independent contractor, small business owners, small fleets, big fleets. We all want to keep driving trucks. So we have these things in common. A lot of times we're opposing one another, and other times we're in 100% complete agreement. So the nature of work is changing. A generation built for a different world. Think about that. If you're like me, you're a little bit older. It's awful hard to steer the younger generations in any direction. Because it's going to be a different world. What I knew, my experiences are all outdated. These are outdated ideas, outdated ways of thinking. They've been taught, and they lived, they grew up with technology. They have a completely different viewpoint, completely different value system. I might think a hard work is a good characteristic, and they might say, well, let the computer do that. Why are you working hard? Let AI do the work. It's like, I don't want AI to do the work. I want to do the work. So it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a big challenge. Anytime older workers come up against younger workers, it's a challenge. It's like the recent graduate, fresh out of school, whether it's trade school or a 4-year college. They've got the latest, greatest ideas, education, computer skills. They just came from the classroom into the workplace, and then they bring new ideas and ways of doing things, and it can catch you off guard. It's like, well, look at these guys. They're good. They're real good. They know how to use this stuff. It's a struggle for me to keep up. I always have to keep learning new technology skills. They may come more natural to the younger generation. It may take a little more work for the older worker, and at some point, I may not be able to keep up with the changes. The younger people have a chance to keep up. But AI is going so fast that 5 years from now, you'll be like, what happened? You know, it's going to be, a world that was designed and operated, built for a younger generation. And you better hold on. Try to do your best to keep what you have, but you better get used to this idea that it's a generation built for a different world. The world is changing. All right, guys, that's all I got for you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the internet.